Let me tell you something that most people do not want to hear. The middle class is disappearing. And it is not primarily because of economic forces or government policy or corporate greed. It is because middle-class Americans have been systematically trained to make financial decisions that guarantee they will never build wealth. They fall into traps that look reasonable, that everyone around them is falling into, that financial institutions and marketers have spent billions of dollars designing, and these traps keep them broke forever, no matter how much money they earn. I have spent over 70 years studying how wealth is created and how it is destroyed. I have watched families earn middle-class incomes for generations and accumulate nothing. I have watched individuals earn modest salaries and retire millionaires. The difference is almost never about income. It is about avoiding the traps that capture most people and drain their financial potential year after year, decade after decade. Today, I want to share the specific money traps that keep middle-class Americans broke. These are not exotic mistakes. These are common decisions that millions of people make every day, convinced they are doing the right thing. If you can recognize these traps and avoid them, you will build wealth that puts you far ahead of people earning similar or even higher incomes. If you cannot, you will struggle financially your entire life, regardless of how hard you work. Let me start with the trap that captures more middle-class wealth than any other. The new car trap. This single financial decision has destroyed more middle-class wealth than almost any other factor I can identify. The average new car costs over $48,000. The average car payment is over $700 per month. The average loan term is stretched to nearly 6 years, and the average American repeats this cycle over and over throughout their working life. Here is what people do not understand about cars. A new car loses approximately 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. By the end of the first year, it has lost 30 to 40%. You are paying interest on a loan for an asset that is rapidly becoming worth less than you owe on it. This is the opposite of wealth building. This is wealth destruction on an accelerating schedule. Let me show you the mathematics that car dealers do not want you to see. A $48,000 car financed at 7% for 72 months costs you over $55,000 in total payments. At the end of 6 years, that car is worth perhaps $15,000. You paid $55,000 for something now worth $15,000. You destroyed $40,000. But the true cost is far worse. If instead of making that $700 monthly payment, you had invested the money at historical stock market returns, after 6 years, you would have approximately $60,000 in investments after 30 years of this pattern, buying new cars versus investing the difference. You would have over $1 million less wealth. One decision, repeated throughout your life, costs you over $1 million. I have driven many cars over the years, but I have never bought a car to impress anyone. A car is transportation. It gets you from one place to another. A $15,000 used car does this exactly as effectively as a $50,000 new car. The only differences are status signaling and some comfort features, neither of which contributes anything to your financial future. The escape from the new car trap is simple. Buy used vehicles that are 3 to 5 years old with reasonable mileage. Let someone else absorb the catastrophic first. Year depreciation, pay cash if possible, or take a short-term loan that you pay off aggressively. Keep vehicles for 10 years or longer rather than trading up every few years. Direct the money you save toward investments that appreciate rather than assets that depreciate. The second trap that destroys middle-class wealth is the house trap. Now, I want to be careful here because I am not saying home ownership is bad. I have lived in the same house since 1958. Home ownership can be a reasonable choice. What I am saying is that the way most middle-class Americans approach home ownership is a trap that prevents wealth building. The trap works like this. Banks tell you that you can afford a house costing up to 4 or 5 times your annual income. Real estate agents show you houses at the top of that range because their commission is higher. You stretch to buy the maximum house you can qualify for, convinced you are building equity and making a smart investment. You spend 30 years making payments. And at the end, You own a house. But here's what nobody tells you. A house is not an investment in any meaningful sense. Yes, housing prices generally rise over time. But so does the cost of everything else. Your house ties up capital that could be generating real returns. It costs you money every month beyond the mortgage payment in property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. And the equity you build is illiquid, meaning you cannot easily access it without selling your home or taking on debt. Let me show you the real math. A $400,000 house with a 30-year mortgage at 7% costs you over $950,000 in total payments. You pay nearly $1 million for a $400,000 asset. Then add property taxes at perhaps $8,000 per year for 30 years, another $240,000. Add insurance at $2,000 per year, another $60,000. Add maintenance at 1% of value annually, another $120,000. Your $400,000 house actually costs you approximately $1.4 million over 30 years. If that house appreciates at the historical average of about 3% annually, it will be worth approximately $970,000 when you finish paying. You spent $1.4 million to own something worth $970,000. You lost over $400,000 compared to renting a similar home for less and investing the difference. The escape from the house trap is not to avoid home ownership entirely. It is to buy significantly less house than you can technically afford. I recommend total housing costs not exceed 20% of gross income, including mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. This leaves money available for actual investments that build wealth. The modest house that enables aggressive investing will make you far wealthier than the expensive house that consumes all your available resources. The third trap is the lifestyle inflation trap. This is perhaps the most insidious because it happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. Your income increases and your spending increases to match. You get a raise and your lifestyle expands. You receive a bonus and you upgrade something. You feel like you are getting ahead because you earn more, but you are running in place because you spend more. I have watched this pattern destroy the wealth, building potential of countless middle-class families, people earning $100,000, $150,000, even $200,000 per year who save nothing because their expenses always expand to consume their income. They have nicer cars, bigger houses, more expensive vacations, and zero net worth accumulation. The mathematics of lifestyle inflation are brutal. If your spending grows at the same rate as your income, your savings rate stays constant. But constant is not good enough. A 10% savings rate maintained over a career will leave you far short of financial independence. The only way to build real wealth is to increase your savings rate over time, which means your spending must grow slower than your income. The escape from the lifestyle inflation trap requires explicit decisions made in advance. When you receive a raise, decide immediately what percentage goes to savings and what percentage can fund lifestyle improvements. I recommend at least 75% to savings and no more than 25% to lifestyle. When you receive a bonus, save all of it. Treat increases in income as opportunities to accelerate wealth building, not as permission to upgrade your consumption. The fourth trap is the credit card trap. Nearly half of American households carry credit card balances month to month. The average balance exceeds $6,000 at interest rates above 20%. This is financial insanity, and it is completely normalized in middle-class America. Let me be absolutely clear about what 20% interest means. It means your debt doubles in less than 4 years if you make only minimum payments. It means you are paying over $1.20 for every dollar of goods you purchased. It means you are systematically transferring wealth from your future self to credit card companies with nothing to show for it. There is no investment anywhere that reliably returns 20% annually. Not stocks, not real estate, not bonds, nothing, but credit card companies charge 20% or more, guaranteed compounding monthly against you. Every dollar of credit card debt you carry is working harder for Visa and MasterCard than any investment could ever work for you. The escape from the credit card trap is absolute: pay off all credit card debt immediately. This is a financial emergency, not a minor issue to address gradually. Cut expenses, sell things, take extra work, do whatever is necessary to get to zero balance as fast as possible, then never carry a balance again. If you cannot pay for something in cash, you cannot afford it. The fifth trap is the keeping up with the Joneses trap, middle. Class Americans are constantly comparing themselves to their neighbors, colleagues, and social media feeds. They see others with nice things and feel inadequate. They spend money. They do not have to maintain an image of success that is often completely fake. Here is what most people do not understand. The Joneses are broke. The family with the luxury cars and the big house and the expensive vacations is often drowning in debt. They have negative net worth. They are one job loss away from financial catastrophe. When you try to keep up with them, you are trying to match an illusion created by borrowing. The truly wealthy people I know are not the ones displaying wealth. They drive modest cars. They live in reasonable houses. They do not feel the need to signal success because they have actual success, which provides its own satisfaction. Trying to look wealthy and being wealthy are often mutually exclusive because the money spent on appearance is money not invested in actual wealth. The escape from this trap requires a fundamental shift in how you measure success. Stop comparing your consumption to others. Start comparing your net worth to your goals. Stop trying to impress people who do not care about you with things you cannot afford. Start building actual wealth that provides actual security and freedom. The sixth trap is the college financing trap, middle. Class parents have been told that they must send their children to expensive universities and that paying for this education is worth any sacrifice. They take on crushing debt or deplete their retirement savings to fund educations that often do not provide corresponding financial returns. I value education enormously, but there is a difference between education and credentials, between learning and degrees. A student can get an excellent education at a state university for a fraction of the cost of a private school. The return on investment for expensive private universities, especially for average students and average programs, is often negative. Parents sacrifice their financial futures for degrees that do not significantly improve their children's outcomes. The escape from this trap is to think about education as an investment, not an obligation. Calculate the cost of different educational paths and the likely income outcomes. Consider community college for the first 2 years. Consider state universities. Consider trade schools for careers that do not require 4-year degrees. The goal is education that provides value exceeding its cost, not credentials purchased at any price. The seventh trap is the subscription trap. This seems minor compared to houses and cars, but it is a significant drain on middle-class finances. The average household spends over $200 per month on subscriptions, many of which provide minimal value: streaming services, gym memberships, premium apps, subscription boxes, cloud storage, premium phone plans. Each seems small individually, but they accumulate into significant ongoing expenses. $200 per month is $2,400 per year over 30 years at historical stock market returns. That money would grow to approximately $600,000. $600,000 spent on subscriptions you probably do not fully use and will not remember. That is the true cost of subscription creep. The escape is to audit your subscriptions ruthlessly and regularly. List every recurring charge. For each one, ask whether you have used it in the past month and whether it provides value worth its cost. Cancel everything that fails this test. Be aggressive. You can always resubscribe if you genuinely miss something. The eighth trap is the emergency excuse trap, middle. Class families often fail to build emergency funds because emergencies always seem to arise. The car breaks down, the refrigerator dies. The kids need something for school. These expenses consume any savings before it can accumulate. But here is what people do not understand. These are not emergencies. These are predictable expenses that occur irregularly. Cars break down, appliances fail, children have needs. A genuine emergency fund is not meant for these expenses. It is meant for job loss, disability, or true catastrophic events. The escape is to budget for irregular expenses separately from your emergency fund. Set aside money monthly for car repairs, home maintenance, medical expenses, and other predictable but irregular costs. Your emergency fund should be touched only for genuine emergencies, which means it actually accumulates over time. The ninth trap is the financial advisor trap. Most financial advisors are not working for you. They are working for themselves. They earn commissions on products they sell, which creates an incentive to recommend products that benefit them rather than you. They charge fees on assets under management, which creates an incentive to keep your money with them rather than helping you pay off debt or make other moves that might be in your interest. I am not saying all financial advisors are bad. Some provide genuine value. But you must understand the incentive structure. Ask how your advisor is compensated. Understand what products they are licensed to sell. Be skeptical of any recommendation that involves commissions or complex products with high fees. The escape is to educate yourself. Learn the basics of personal finance and investing. For most middle-class families, the optimal strategy is simple. Pay off high-interest debt, build an emergency fund, invest in low-cost index funds through tax-advantaged accounts. You do not need a financial advisor for this. You need discipline and patience. The 10th trap is the short-term thinking trap. Middle-class Americans are constantly making decisions based on immediate circumstances rather than long-term consequences. They buy what they can afford today without considering what that purchase costs in future wealth. They address immediate wants while ignoring long-term needs. This short-term focus is encouraged by everything around you. Advertising emphasizes immediate gratification. Credit makes it possible to have things now and pay later. Social media creates pressure to display success immediately rather than build it gradually. The escape requires consciously extending your time horizon before any significant financial decision. Project forward 10 or 20 or 30 years. What will this decision cost in terms of foregone compound growth? What will your financial situation look like if you make this choice versus an alternative? Making decisions for your future self rather than your present self is the fundamental skill of wealth building. Let me bring all of these traps together with a comprehensive picture of how they interact to keep middle-class families broke. A typical middle-class family earns $100,000 per year. They buy a house consuming 30% of their income. They have 2 car payments totaling $1,000 per month. They carry credit card balances averaging $8,000. They spend $200 per month on subscriptions. They inflate their lifestyle with every raise. They have no emergency fund because expenses always arise. They pay a financial advisor 1% annually on what little savings they have. This family feels middle class. They live in a nice neighborhood. They drive recent model cars. They take vacations. They appear successful, but they have essentially zero net worth. They are one job loss away from financial catastrophe. They will work until they physically cannot because they have no choice. Now consider an alternative family with the same income. They buy a house consuming 20% of their income. They drive used cars purchased with cash. They have no credit card debt. They spend $50 per month on subscriptions. They save 75% of every raise. They have a fully funded emergency fund. They invest directly in low-cost index funds. This family appears less successful by superficial measures. Their house is smaller, their cars are older, they take fewer vacations, but they accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars over their working careers. They reach a point where work becomes optional and they have security and freedom that the first family will never experience. Same income, same economic environment, same opportunities, completely different outcomes. determined entirely by whether they avoided or fell into these traps. I want to address something that some people are thinking right now. You might be saying that I am wealthy and do not understand the pressures facing middle-class families. You might be saying that it is easy to advise frugality when you have billions of dollars. But I lived frugally long before I had billions. I bought my house in 1958 when my net worth was modest. I drove used cars when I could have afforded new ones. I avoided lifestyle inflation when my income began to grow. The habits that build wealth are the same, regardless of your income level. They just operate on different scales. And the traps I have described capture people at every income level. I know families earning $200,000 per year who are broke. I know families earning $50,000 per year who have built substantial wealth. The traps do not discriminate based on income. They capture anyone who falls into them. The middle class is struggling not because of economic conditions beyond their control, but because of decisions within their control. The traps are avoidable. Every single one of them is a choice. You can choose to buy a used car instead of a new one. You can choose to buy less house than you can afford. You can choose to save raises instead of spending them. You can choose to eliminate credit card debt. You can choose to ignore what the Joneses appear to have. These choices are not easy. They require resisting constant pressure from marketers, social expectations, and your own impulses. But they are possible, and they are the only path from middle class struggle to middle class wealth. I've lived long enough to see families build wealth from nothing and families squander high incomes into nothing. The pattern is consistent. Those who avoid the traps prosper. Those who fall into them struggle. The traps are the same generation after generation. Only the specific products and marketing techniques change. You have the knowledge now. You know what the traps are. You know how they work. You know what they cost. The only question is whether you will use this knowledge to make different choices. Your financial future is not determined by your income or your education or your background. It is determined by whether you fall into these traps or avoid them. The choice is yours, and it is a choice you make every single day through thousands of small decisions that accumulate into dramatically different outcomes. Choose wisely. Your future depends on it. Let me share some additional observations about these traps that might help you recognize and avoid them in your own life. One thing I have noticed over decades is that these traps are interconnected. They reinforce each other in ways that make escape progressively harder. The expensive house requires 2 incomes, which requires 2 cars, which requires more childcare, which creates more stress, which leads to more consumption as stress relief. Each trap makes the others more difficult to escape. This interconnection means that addressing one trap in isolation often fails. You cannot just decide to spend less on cars while maintaining an expensive house that requires a long commute. You cannot just decide to save more while maintaining a lifestyle that consumes all available income. The traps must be addressed systematically, often requiring significant changes to how you have organized your life. I have also noticed that these traps have become more sophisticated over time. When I was young, consumer credit was limited. You could not easily borrow money to buy things. You could not afford today. Credit is everywhere, in infinite variety, designed to make spending as frictionless as possible. The barriers that once protected people from overspending have been systematically dismantled. Similarly, marketing has become more sophisticated. Every advertisement you see has been optimized through extensive testing to maximize its ability to separate you from your money. Social media has created new forms of pressure as people curate images of consumption that others feel compelled to match. The forces pushing you toward these traps are stronger than ever before. This means that avoiding the traps requires more deliberate effort than it did in the past. You cannot simply follow the path of least resistance and end up financially secure. The path of least resistance leads directly into the traps. You must consciously and continuously choose a different path. Let me share some specific strategies for escaping these traps, if you are currently caught in one or more of them. If you are trapped in an expensive car, you have options. You can sell the car even at a loss and replace it with something more modest. The loss you take today is far smaller than the continued losses from depreciation, interest, insurance, and opportunity cost. Yes, you might be underwater on the loan. Yes, you might need to take a personal loan to cover the difference. This is still often the right decision when you calculate the full long-term cost. If you are trapped in an expensive house, the calculus is more complex, but the principle is the same. Selling involves transaction costs, and housing markets fluctuate. But if your housing is consuming more than 25% of your income, you are sacrificing your financial future for shelter that exceeds your needs. Consider whether downsizing, even with its costs, would put you in a better long-term position. If you are trapped in credit card debt, this must become your overwhelming priority. The interest you pay on credit card debt is guaranteed wealth destruction at a rate no investment can match. Every dollar of extra payment you can make reduces this destruction. Sell things, cut subscriptions, take additional work, live as frugally as possible until this debt is eliminated. If you are trapped in lifestyle inflation, you need to consciously reset your baseline. This is difficult because your brain has adapted to your current lifestyle. Reducing spending feels like deprivation even though you lived happily at a lower level in the past. But the adaptation that made increased spending feel normal can work in reverse. After a few months of reduced spending, your new lower level will feel normal. If you are trapped in comparison with others, you need to change what you pay attention to. Unfollow social media accounts that trigger spending impulses. Spend less time with people whose lifestyle pressures you to overspend. Seek out communities of people who share your values about money and wealth building. Your social environment shapes your behavior more than your conscious intentions. I want to speak specifically to young people who have not yet fallen into these traps. You have an enormous advantage because prevention is far easier than cure. The decisions you make in your 20s about housing, transportation, and lifestyle will determine your financial trajectory for decades. Do not buy a new car, not now, and not ever, unless you have success or wealth. The status you might gain is trivial compared to the wealth you sacrifice. Buy reliable used vehicles, maintain them well, and drive them until they cannot be economically repaired. Do not buy the maximum house a bank will finance. Buy well below your qualification level, ideally paying no more than 20% of your income for total housing costs. The modest house that enables aggressive saving will make you far wealthier than the impressive house that consumes your resources. Do not inflate your lifestyle as your income grows. When you receive a raise, immediately redirect the majority to savings and investments. Live like a student for as long as you can. The lifestyle you establish in your 20s becomes your baseline. Keep that baseline low and you have decades to build wealth on top of it. Do not carry credit card debt for any reason. If you cannot pay cash for something, you cannot afford it. Build an emergency fund so you do not need to use credit cards for unexpected expenses. Treat credit card debt as a financial emergency to be addressed immediately if it ever occurs. These simple rules, applied from the beginning of your working life, virtually guarantee that you will build substantial wealth over time. The rules are not complicated. The challenge is maintaining discipline when everyone around you is doing the opposite. Let me also address those who feel it is too late for them. Perhaps you are in your 40s or 50s and already deep in multiple traps. Perhaps you feel that the damage is done and there is no point in trying to change course now. This thinking is wrong. It is never too late to improve your financial situation. Yes, the earlier you start, the more time compound interest has to work. But any improvement at any age is better than no improvement. Even if you are 55, you likely have 10 to 20 working years left. The decisions you make now will determine whether those years build security or dig deeper into the traps. Furthermore, the changes you make affect not just your future, but potentially your children's future. Breaking the cycle of these traps in your family can compound across generations. Your children learn about money primarily from watching you. If you demonstrate the behaviors that build wealth, they are more likely to adopt those behaviors themselves. I have watched families transform their financial trajectories in a single generation. Parents who grew up poor fell into middle-class traps, recognized what was happening, made changes, and ended up building wealth they never expected. Their children started from a better position and built even more. Within 2 generations, a family went from financial struggle to financial security. This transformation is available to anyone willing to recognize the traps and take action to escape them. It requires honesty about your current situation, willingness to make uncomfortable changes, and persistence through the years it takes for compound interest to work. Let me close with something I have observed about the people who successfully escape these traps. They share certain characteristics that are available to anyone. First, they are honest with themselves about their financial situation. They do not hide from the numbers. They track their spending, calculate their net worth, and face the reality of their position, even when it is uncomfortable. Second, they take responsibility for their situation. They do not blame external factors, even when external factors contributed to their problems. They focus on what they can control rather than complaining about what they cannot. Third, they think long-term. They make decisions based on where they want to be in 10 or 20 years, not on what feels good today. They are willing to sacrifice present comfort for future freedom. Fourth, they are willing to be different. They resist social pressure to consume. They do not need to match what others appear to have. They measure success by net worth, not by lifestyle. Fifth, they are persistent. They continue making wealth, building choices year after year, even when progress seems slow. They understand that compound interest works gradually and then dramatically. These characteristics are not genetic. They are not determined by background or education. They are choices that anyone can make. The question is whether you will make them. The middle-class money traps I have described are real. They capture millions of Americans and keep them broke, regardless of how much they earn. But they are also avoidable. Every trap is a choice. Every choice can be made differently. You now know what the traps are. You understand how they work and what they cost. The knowledge is not the barrier. The barrier is action. Will you use this knowledge to make different choices? Will you escape the traps that have captured so many others? Will you build actual wealth instead of just appearing middle class? The decision is yours. Make it wisely, make it today, and make it again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day for the rest of your life. That is how wealth is built. That is how the traps are escaped. That is how financial freedom is achieved, one choice at a time.